I stood on the edge of the cliff, my boots scraping against the loose gravel as I peered down. And then it happened. The bear cub slipped. I saw its small body tumbling, rolling over rocks, bouncing off jagged ledges. I heard a sickening crack when it hit the bottom. My heart stopped. I don't even remember why I climbed up here tonight. Maybe it was the sunset. Maybe I just needed to get away from everything. Life had been heavy lately. My job at the hardware store wasn't going anywhere. My mom had been sick, and this mountain had always been the only place I could breathe. But tonight, the mountain gave me something else. I gripped the rough bark of a nearby pine to steady myself, my mind racing. I couldn't just stand here. The cub wasn't moving. Or was it? I squinted through the fading light. There, a faint twitch. It was alive. I turned and slid down the side path, grabbing branches, stumbling over roots, scraping my palms on the ground as I half climbed, half fell down the slope. The air smelled like rain-soaked earth and crushed pine needles. My jeans tore on a sharp rock, but I didn't care. All I could think about was reaching that little body. When I finally got to the bottom, I could see it more clearly. The cub was lying on its side, its chest rising and falling fast, like it had just run a marathon. One paw was bent at an odd angle, and blood matted the fur around its ear. Its eyes blinked slowly, dazed but not gone. I knelt beside it, afraid to touch it, afraid it might lash out, or worse, that it wouldn't move again. But it just looked at me. No growl, no fear. Just trust? Or maybe resignation. "Hey, buddy," I whispered, my voice trembling. "You're a tough little guy, huh?" I looked around, expecting to see the mother somewhere in the shadows. But the forest was quiet. Too quiet. No rustling, no distant cracking of branches. Just the occasional drip of water from the rocks above. I had to do something. Couldn't leave it here. It wouldn't survive the night. And if the mother did come back, I wasn't sure that would end well either. I pulled off my flannel jacket and gently wrapped it around the cub, lifting it as carefully as I could. It whimpered once, a soft, broken sound that made my throat tighten. "You're okay," I muttered, more for myself than for it. "We'll figure this out." The climb back up felt twice as long. My arms burned, my legs shook, but I didn't stop. Every few steps, the cub shifted, letting out quiet noises that made me move faster. By the time I reached the top, the last light of day had faded into a dark, velvety blue. Stars were starting to peek through the clouds. My truck was parked a short walk away. I laid the cub gently on the passenger seat, wrapping the jacket tighter around it. His breathing was shallow, but steady. As I started the engine, a long, low sound echoed through the forest. A howl. But it wasn't a coyote, and it wasn't quite a bear's roar either. It was something in between, drawn-out, mournful, almost pleading. I froze, my hand on the steering wheel, listening. The sound came again, closer this time. My skin prickled. My eyes scanned the treeline, but all I saw was darkness. I drove off, the headlights cutting a narrow path through the winding road. Behind me, the howl rose once more, then faded into the night. I didn't know it then, but that sound wasn't just calling for the cub. It was calling for me too. When I got home, I carried the cub straight to the old shed behind my house. It wasn't much, just some wooden walls, a leaky roof, a pile of firewood in the corner. But it was dry and safe, at least for now. I laid him down on an old blanket and unwrapped the jacket. He whimpered softly, blinking up at me with glassy eyes. His paw looked worse in the light. A deep gash ran along his leg, swollen and raw. "All right, little guy," I said quietly. "Let's see what we can do." I rummaged through the old first aid kit in the kitchen, grabbing gauze, antiseptic, and some tape. Back in the shed, I knelt beside him and started cleaning the wound. He squirmed, letting out tiny growls, but didn't try to bite. His small claws flexed in the blanket as I worked. "You're tougher than you look," I murmured. "We're gonna get through this." Once the wound was cleaned and wrapped, I set a small bowl of water beside him and propped a heat lamp over his corner, hoping it'd keep him warm enough through the night. He curled into a tight ball, his breathing slowing, finally drifting into sleep. I sat on an old stool, staring at him, listening to the quiet creak of the shed settling around us. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling through the trees. For a moment, it felt peaceful. But then I heard it, a soft crunch of leaves. Then another, closer. I stood up, peering out the window. The yard was bathed in silver moonlight, shadows stretching long across the grass. Something moved between the trees. a dark shape, watching. I swallowed hard and locked the shed door. My hands trembled as I walked back to the house, double-checking every latch and bolt. I couldn't shake the feeling of being followed. That night, I barely slept. Every creak, every distant howl made me jolt awake. Around 3 in the morning, I heard footsteps circling the house. Slow, deliberate. My breath caught in my throat. Then, silence. Morning came gray and cold. I stepped outside, rubbing my eyes. The yard looked undisturbed. No tracks, no sign of anyone or anything. As I was checking on the cub, I heard a truck pulling up the gravel road. It was Bill. "Morning," he called out, climbing out of the driver's seat. "You all right? Heard some weird noises last night." I nodded, glancing toward the woods. "Yeah, something was out there." Bill frowned. "I saw a bear near the road early this morning. Big one. She was pacing back and forth like she was looking for something." My stomach twisted. "You think she's looking for him?" I nodded toward the shed. "Probably. And she won't stop until she finds him," Bill said. "You better be careful. A mother bear's no joke." I knew he was right, but what was I supposed to do? The cub couldn't walk yet. He wouldn't survive alone. After Bill left, I decided to head into town. I needed more supplies, milk replacer, maybe some soft food, and I needed advice. The drive was quiet, but the feeling of eyes on me never left. Every time I stopped at a red light or pulled into a parking lot, I caught glimpses of faces turned my way. A man by the feed store seemed to watch me a little too long. A woman outside the diner lowered her phone quickly when I looked her way. I bought what I needed and hurried back to my truck, loading everything into the back seat. The drive home felt longer than usual. The sky darkened with heavy clouds, and a light drizzle began to fall. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the yard was slick with mud. I climbed out, groceries in hand, and stopped cold. There, on the front porch, was a small bird, dead. Its wings spread wide, its neck twisted at an unnatural angle. It hadn't just died, it had been placed there. A warning. My chest tightened as I looked out toward the woods. Something was waiting. The next few nights blurred together in a tense rhythm of pacing, listening, and watching. Every evening, just as the sun melted into the horizon, I'd hear it. The low, steady crunch of heavy paws moving through the brush. Circling. Always circling. I kept the shed locked, kept the cub fed and warm. But I couldn't keep the unease out. Every creak of the floorboards felt louder. Every shadow stretched longer. By the third night, the bear's presence wasn't just outside. It was in my head. I'd glance over my shoulder at nothing. I'd stare at the tree line too long, imagining shapes that weren't there. In the morning, I called the sheriff. "Something's not right," I told him over the phone. "She's not acting like a normal bear. Bears don't act normal when their cubs go missing," he said plainly. "Best thing you can do is let it go. Let nature sort itself out." "I can't," I said. "He's too weak. He won't make it." He sighed. "Then you're keeping a problem on your hands. You'll have to answer for it if anything happens." When I hung up, Bill was already waiting in my driveway. He leaned against his truck, arms crossed, his expression tight. "You're not thinking straight, man," he started. "You know she's not gonna stop. You're putting yourself in danger. Us too." "I'm not letting him die out there," I snapped. Bill shook his head. "You're playing hero with the wrong animal. This isn't a puppy. It's a wild bear. She'll tear this place apart if she has to." I didn't answer. Couldn't. The weight in my chest was too heavy. That evening, I sat in the shed beside the cub, watching him sleep. His breathing had steadied, and he could lift his head now, though his leg was still swollen. "I don't know what to do, little guy," I whispered. "I can't keep you here forever." Outside, the wind rattled the tin roof. Then a low thud. I froze. Another. Closer. Something brushing against the wall. I stood up slowly, peeking through the small window. And there she was. The mother bear stood at the edge of the yard, her massive shape lit faintly by the moon. She didn't move closer, just stood there, watching. My breath caught in my throat. She didn't growl, didn't charge, just looked at me, silent, patient. I stepped back from the window, feeling her gaze like a weight pressing against my chest. The next few hours passed in quiet tension. I sat on the floor, back against the wall, listening to her footsteps circling again. But she never tried to break in. At dawn, the sky streaked pale blue and pink. I opened the shed door carefully, scanning the yard. She was gone, but something felt off. I turned back toward the cub's corner. Empty. The blanket lay rumpled. The heat lamp still glowed softly. The door hadn't been broken open. It had been unlatched from the inside. My heart thudded in my ears as I stepped outside again, eyes scanning the muddy ground. Tiny paw prints led away from the shed, and beside them larger ones, side by side, leading into the trees. I followed the tracks into the woods, my boots sinking into the damp earth with each step. The morning light filtered through the trees, casting long shadows that made the forest feel deeper, older. The small paw prints were easy to spot in the mud, but the larger ones beside them, that was what kept my stomach twisted in knots. They walked together, side by side. I couldn't shake the image of them leaving, the cub somehow walking beside her. Even though his leg had been swollen and weak, how had he managed? I kept going. The tracks led downhill, weaving between rocks and fallen logs. After about an hour, the prints veered toward a steep ridge. My breath caught when I reached the edge. Below was the same cliff where the cub had fallen days ago. But here, in the dirt near the drop, were more tracks. Not just bear tracks, boot prints. I crouched down, running my fingers along the impressions. Fresh. Someone else had been here recently. I looked around, scanning the area. The forest felt too quiet. Even the birds were silent. Beyond the ridge, the trail split. The bear's tracks went left, deeper into the woods. But the boot prints, they went right. I hesitated, glancing in both directions. Every instinct told me to follow the cub. But something about those boots pulled at me. I turned right. The path narrowed, overgrown with brambles that scratched at my arms. After another 15 minutes, the trees opened up into a small clearing. And there, hidden beneath a curtain of vines, stood an old cabin. The windows were boarded. The door hung crooked on its hinges. Smoke curled faintly from a metal chimney, thin and gray against the sky. Someone was here. I stepped closer, heart pounding. Near the door, I saw it again. Muddy boot prints, leading inside. I knocked softly. No answer. I tried the door. Creaked open with a groan. Inside, the air smelled of damp wood and something sharper, metallic, like old blood. A table stood in the center, cluttered with jars, tools, and a lantern. Against the far wall, cages, empty but stained. My throat tightened. I walked further in, scanning every shadow. On the floor, a rope. Beside it, a small tuft of fur. Bear fur. Suddenly, a voice behind me. "You shouldn't be here." I spun around. Bill stood in the doorway, his face pale. "What the hell are you doing?" he hissed. "I followed the tracks," I said. "There's something going on here." He shook his head, stepping inside. "This place, it's bad news. You need to leave." "Do you know whose cabin this is?" I asked. Bill didn't answer. His jaw clenched. "Come on, we're leaving." I hesitated, looking back at the cages. Something in my gut told me not to walk away, but Bill's hand gripped my arm tight. "We'll talk later," he muttered. Reluctantly, I followed him out. We walked in silence back toward the road. But the whole way, I felt it again, that weight like eyes pressing into my back. When I got home, dusk had already settled. I sat on the porch, staring at the trees, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. Then I noticed the envelope. It lay on the step, plain and unmarked. I picked it up, opening it slowly. Inside, a single note. "This isn't your cub." I stared at the words, my chest tightening. And then, from the woods, a sound. A child's cry. "Hi, fragile." Coming from deep among the trees. I stood up fast, heart pounding, the note fluttering from my hand. The cry echoed again, and I walked toward it. I stepped off the porch, each footfall heavier than the last, drawn toward the sound. The child's cry floated again from the trees, thin and distant, but enough to pull me deeper. Branches scratched my arms as I pushed forward, flashlight bobbing with every step. The night pressed in tight, shadows crowding every corner. I called out once, twice, but no answer came back. And then I saw it. Faint glow ahead. The beam of my light caught on something pale. A mound of earth with a jagged opening at its base. A cave. The crying was louder now, echoing from inside. I crept closer, my heart hammering. Near the entrance, huddled against a stone, was the cub. He looked up at me, eyes wide, chest rising fast. His paw still carried the bandage I'd wrapped days ago. But he wasn't alone. Behind him, deeper in the cave, shadows moved. Voices. Low, rough, human. I ducked behind a boulder, straining to listen. Move the crates tonight. They're paying double for live ones. Keep that one separate. It's worth more. My blood went cold. I peeked around the rock. Inside, by the flickering glow of a lantern, I saw them, 3 men, loading cages onto a small ATV. Inside those cages, shapes shifted. Foxes, owls, a bobcat, and in one, something bigger. A bear cub, another one. I realized then the cub I'd saved wasn't the only one. And this wasn't about an accident. They'd been taking them, selling them. I looked back at the cub near the entrance. He wasn't trying to escape. He was waiting. For me. And maybe for her. A low growl rumbled behind me. I turned slowly. She stood at the edge of the clearing, massive and silent. Her dark eyes fixed on the cave. Not on me. On them. And suddenly I understood. She hadn't been trying to get her cub back from me. She'd been following me because I was getting closer to this. To them. She needed me to see. I swallowed hard and stepped into the cave, crouching low. The men hadn't noticed me yet. I moved toward the cages, heart slamming against my ribs. The bear followed, her huge form slipping through the entrance without a sound. I reached the nearest cage, fingers fumbling with the latch. Creaked. One of the men snapped his head around. "Hey!" The bear surged forward with a roar that shook the walls. Chaos erupted. The men shouted, scrambling for weapons, but she was faster. She barreled into them, knocking one aside like a rag doll. Another raised a rifle, but I tackled him before he could aim. The third bolted for the ATV, but the bear cut him off, her massive body blocking the path. I yanked open cage after cage, freeing the animals one by one. They scattered into the dark, some limping, some running. The cub at the entrance watched, then slowly padded toward his mother. The last man swung a metal pipe at her, but she caught it with her claws, ripping it from his hands. He stumbled back, falling hard. I grabbed the rifle and tossed it into the brush. The fight drained from them fast. And then sirens, flashing lights cutting through the trees. Bill's truck pulled up first, followed by the sheriff's car. Officers poured out, guns raised, but lowered them quickly as they saw the scene. The men were cuffed, dragged out one by one. I stood there, breathless, covered in dirt and sweat, watching as the bear nudged her cub gently toward the woods. The sheriff walked over, shaking his head. "I don't know how you pulled this off." I watched the mother and cub disappear into the shadows, their shapes blending with the trees. "I didn't," I said quietly. "She did." Later, after the trucks left, after the woods fell silent again, I sat alone on the cliff's edge, the same place where it had all started. Below, the forest stretched dark and deep, a sea of whispers and rustling leaves. Somewhere out there, she was walking with him, safe, free, and I wondered, staring into the night, why had she trusted me? I'd never know.